Last weekend's Australian Grand Prix was by far and away the most eventful Grand Prix of the season so far. With 2 safety cars, 3 red flags and 8 race retirements, it has certainly got the fans talking, particularly about the chaos that ensued during the 2-lap sprint to the finish. The main talking point to come out of the race, and it has certainly divided opinion, is whether Formula 1 prioritised the entertainment value over the sport's integrity in that 2-lap sprint finish, meaning the 3 separate incidents that occurred on that frantic restart have almost been cast aside. It is these 3 incidents that have exposed further inconsistencies in the FIA's stewarding, as only one of them resulted in the driver being handed a time penalty, which for many has come across as a decision that makes no sense. So that's what today's video is going to be about. It's going to be looking at each of these incidents and trying to see how they occurred and why the stewards came to the decision to either deem it a racing incident or deem one driver at fault. The first incident was Carlos Sainz tipping Fernando Alonso into a spin on the exit of turn 1 as they battled for position, and this resulted in Sainz being deemed at fault for the incident and handed a 5-second time penalty, which saw him drop out of the points. Alonso took the restart in 3rd place with Sainz just behind him, and as they approached turn 1, Alonso was clearly ahead, but with space on the right hand side of the track, Sainz made an attempt to take the place. Fernando focused most of his efforts on trying to get a good exit from the corner, and this is why he took a slightly wider line than usual as he tried to pressure Lewis Hamilton and race leader Max Verstappen in front of him. But it's this decision that meant there was a gap on the inside, which Sainz tried to take advantage of. But in his eagerness to take the position, Carlos just took a little bit too much speed into the corner, which meant he just missed the apex, and this is why he ran a little bit too far wide and made contact with Alonso's right rear tyre and tipped him into a spin. And although Sainz pleaded his innocence over the incident, once the stewards had reviewed it, they determined that he was wholly to blame for the collision. In the report, they said Alonso had been significantly ahead of Sainz going into the first corner, and while it was similar to a first lap incident, there was a sufficient gap for Sainz to take in order to avoid a collision. The 5 seconds that were added on to Sainz's race time hurt even more as the race finished under safety car conditions following the 3rd and final red flag, which meant that he dropped from a podium position down to P12 and out of the points. Ultimately, I do think the stewards got it right on this one. Although it was similar to a first lap incident, Sainz was not completely in control of his car and could have easily avoided making contact with Fernando. Let's move on to the second incident, which involved the Alpines of Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon when the pair collided on the exit of turn 2 and ended up in the barriers, having both run inside the points during the race. Alpine had been having a good race in Melbourne. Gasly was running in the top 5 and Ocon had made his way into the points when the second red flag was shown. Alpine's race would unravel just a matter of seconds after the race restart, as Gasly was forced to take to the grass after almost running into the back of Alonso, and he rejoined the track just ahead of his teammate Ocon. Ocon attempted to go around the outside of Gasly at turn 2, but Gasly, in his hastiness to make up for his mistake, slowly veered across the track and ended up making contact with Ocon, sending both cars into the wall and knocking them out of the race. But while the incident was taken to the stewards, they took a much more lenient view on it compared to Sainz's collision with Alonso. Having reviewed the marshalling system data, the video and in-car video evidence, together with the drivers, the stewards determined that it was a first lap racing incident. Unlike the Sainz incident, this was for me the wrong decision. Looking back at the footage, in my view, Gasly was fortunate to get away with no form of punishment, as he rejoined the track in quite an unsafe manner, failing to check his mirrors and then veering across the track into Ocon's path. I felt that it was quite odd that Gasly decided to move across to the right hand side of the track without taking the precaution that there might be a car alongside him when he rejoined, and this was obviously key to how the incident would ultimately unfold, and it was quite significant that he managed to get away without any kind of punishment, as obviously he's got 10 penalty points on his super licence, which means he's just 2 away from a race ban. And you've got to say that he was quite fortunate to get away with this one, because it was an incident that was probably deemed worthy of at least 2 penalty points, which of course would have given him that race ban for the next race in Baku. So that leaves us with the 3rd and final incident to look at, and this involved the Williams of Logan Sargeant and the AlphaTauri of Nick De Vries, when Sargeant locked up his brakes and ran clean into the back of De Vries, taking both cars out at the first corner. Looking at the incident, it is one of those things that can happen on a race restart, especially when you've got cold brakes and cold tyres. Sargeant made a mistake, locked up and ran into the back of De Vries, taking both cars out. But nevertheless, it was baffling that this incident went completely unnoticed by the stewards. In fact, they didn't even look at it and didn't even call the drivers to the steward's office to have a look at the incident and consider banishing out any kind of penalty. You have to say that Sargeant really was fortunate to get away without any kind of penalty for this collision. Usually in these sort of circumstances the stewards will look into it, and 9 times out of 10 the driver at fault will be given a grid chop for the next race. And that leads us on to what this video is ultimately about, and that is of course stewards' inconsistencies. And this isn't just a problem that has happened this year, it has happened for generations, and it really is a continuous problem within Formula 1. Consistency is obviously something that we ask for as fans, not just in Formula 1 but in all of sport, and it is obviously difficult to do so because there are different instances and a different set of circumstances for each type of incident, and that of course does lead to those inconsistent decisions between one incident at one race and an incident at another. But the fact that these incidents took place in the same race and in close proximity, it is baffling that the stewards ultimately took a different view on each of them and only took action on one of the 3 incidents. As fans, it is natural that we're always going to be calling for consistency, but going forward it is imperative that the FIA tries to impose this as best as they can in their decision making, not just to win our trust but also the drivers. Be sure to let me know in the comments what you made of each incident and whether the stewards got it right in their verdict. Also, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching guys, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.